OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Final hour OverDrive continues. Brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, Dave Poulin in here. Our friend Cheryl Pounder a little bit later this hour. Big news today. The Professional Women's Hockey League has been established, and there's an original 6. And hopefully, in 100 years, we look back and say that was the original 6.
Very cool cities.
Yes. You got Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Minneapolis, Boston, and the New York area. New York.
Very interesting cities.
Yeah. I guess the longest travel is Minneapolis to Boston.
And I think the rivalries on the women's side between the Minneapolis and Boston areas rival what was existing on that 1980 Lake Placid men's team.
Really?
Like, those guys hated each other.
Yeah. Big hockey pockets in the U.S.
Huge. The two biggest at that point by far.
Yeah. And then Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, that's got to be a big connection. Like, that's got to be huge rivalries that need to be built up. And
yeah, I've got some questions for Cheryl about, because you can sign 3 free agents before the draft. So
right.
It makes sense that Marie-Philippe Poulin would stay in
Montreal and works for the Canadians.
And works for the Canadians. It was so, I think they're trying to make sense of it. Do you get the biggest stars from your area geographically?
Right.
Like, you get 3 of them. You can sign 3 of them. But they're for a large dollar, like I believe it's $80,000.
Yeah, I think the height is $80,000 and the low end is $35,000, I believe. But you can only have 9 players on your roster making that. I think the intention is like the median is 55.
Right.
Yeah, the median contract and salary is $55,000. So again, it's a start. They got to build on this, but this was necessary. I mean, I've spoken with many people in the women's game. I know you have as well. There was always an understanding. You had to consolidate at some point.
Well,
you didn't have competing fractions and competing leagues. That was never going to work.
When I came into Toronto in 2009, one of the first tasks Berkey gave me was to talk to the various factions and figure out what we could do to help. And I had been very involved on the women's athletics side at Notre Dame with Title IX and all the different challenges we had. So, I understood that. And in speaking to them at that point, and that was now 14 years ago, Bryan, they wanted no part of each other.
Right.
Like, they just simply didn't.
There was some bad blood there.
There was some, and and the complexity of the group, and it wasn't just the U.S. side and the Canadian side. There was a mix all in between. I mean, they're all, their alliances went in so many different directions. Mm-hmm. And so to see them get it worked out, it took a long time.
Yeah.
Like, you would say, well, why are there 2 leagues? They couldn't answer that.
Mm-hmm.
And so this really is a great step for women's hockey. And Cheryl's going to be thrilled. She'll be excited.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think that's probably, there's a lot of, current players, but former players that probably look to this say, like, this is so necessary. And you got to build on. And listen, it's going to take a lot of work. A lot of marketing. You got to be cutting edge here.
The NHL has to help. And we wanted to help. That was the whole point, is we wanted to help. We wanted to be the partner of the team, if you will, in any way we could. And if you look at the cities that they're in, they all have NHL teams, which makes total sense. Mm-hmm. And it makes total sense to have a sister team. And from a marketing standpoint, from a licensing standpoint, that's the way you can build it. That's the most logical way to build it.
Yeah, I'm curious what, the team names are going to look like, logos. Like, do you connect to that local NHL team? I don't think they do. I think you need to have...
they have their own identity.
Yeah, I think you have to have your own standalone identity.
Yeah. But it's interesting to know what Mark Walter's whole role is in this. He is one of the owners of the Dodgers, and that's huge money. Like, he came in and physically, with his money, took out the leagues.
Right. And said, now we're going to consolidate
Now
this,
we can do it properly.
And we're going to do it properly, and we're going to try to pay as much as we can. Again, that's going to have to be something that changes over time for this to really work, is the money's got to go up at some point.
Well, but this is going up versus nothing or what it was.
Sure.
And you think, how do you keep a competitive player? Some of these young Olympians were so talented. What do you do for 4 years?
Yeah.
Where do you go? Now, if you're through college, A lot of them played in the U.S. college system. And once you're through that, there's no place to go to play competitively. And I know Cheryl coaches her daughter's teams, and very competitive teams. I think she's ecstatic to go to practice tonight and lay it all out for them and look at what you can now have.
Right.
You now have an option to think about a career in hockey.
Yeah. That
you didn't have yesterday.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think that's a big part of the sales pitch. And again, the marketing's got to be on point. I think I have daughters, you have daughters. My daughters are playing hockey. This is something that I think will be right in my wheelhouse for quite some time. But you got to market to men, you got to market to boys. Like in order for it to be
no question
to explode, it can't. And I'm not suggesting that they're thinking this way. It's not just, well, it's women, it's girls. It's got to be everyone. And that's going to be, I think, the challenge is how do you explode that market? Like hockey, these are hockey-rich markets. There is a marketplace for this. And it's about connecting with the right people. I think it's about social media being your friend. You got to make stars here. Like we all know Marie-Philippe Poulin. We know a number of players. Sarah Nurse. We know a number of great players. They have to be like internationally renowned.
And that's why putting them in the proper markets
is huge.
Is really significant. I mean, Marie-Philippe Poulin in Montreal versus in Minnesota just wouldn't make sense.
No, exactly.
It just would not.
But there has to get to a point where if she gets traded,
will they get past that?
Yeah, that it's big. Exactly. You can't just say, well, Marie-Philippe Poulin can only be in Montreal for this to work.
No.
I think that makes a lot of sense for it to start that way. You know, again, I would suggest Sarah Nurse probably in Toronto. But there are going to be trades. There's going to be free agency. Like that's we're talking about a real league here.
And Brian Burke being the initial executive director makes sense from a connection standpoint. He worked for the NHL.
He's got all the connections in the world.
Bill Daly has come out and said, we will do everything to support this league. Bill Daly worked with Brian Burke.
Yeah.
He's not picking up the phone and calling someone you don't know.
Right. And likely they start, this league starts playing in OHL ranks, American Hockey League ranks, maybe college ranks.
24 games even, which is a good number.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the right number. It's not an 80-game schedule or a 60-game
Start with
schedule.
24, 12 at home, 12 on the road. I think they're hoping to get to 32 at some point, and then maybe you expand beyond that.
But you are right about point of purchase being the proper size rink.
Yeah.
And there are lots of options in the cities that we've talked about.
And maybe if you can connect with the incumbent team that plays there and connect on double headers and stuff like that. Like, let's say the Toronto team plays down at Coca-Cola, what used to be Rico. Let's say the Marlies start at 4 and the women's game is at 1.
Perfect.
There you go. Or vice versa, whichever one. It doesn't matter. But that's, I think, what you're kind of looking at, being in bed with both sides and then finding a way to market collectively. Because then I think it can work for both parties.
Right.
Right. And they're just getting started here, but obviously you got really smart people and they've launched this. It's a starting point, and hopefully it takes off. And it's something that's around for a long time. So Cheryl Pounder will join us in about 20 minutes. It is a Tuesday around 6:05. Are you ready to fire up, confirm, or deny?
I am.
I can neither confirm or deny that this is in fact a segment.
Austin trades Andrew Raycroft to Toronto in exchange for the rights to Tuukka Rask.
It's been my honor and a privilege to serve as the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs Hockey Club.
It's time for Confirm or Deny.
Do you regret giving all those gentlemen the no trades or no movement clauses?
I can neither confirm or deny that.
I can't confirm or deny.
All right, Confirm or Deny brought to you by Don Valley North Lexus. Right now, lease the 2023 IS 300 Premium Package from just $288 bi-weekly for 24 months. Visit DonValleyNorthLexus.com for all of the details. 20 years ago today, the Leafs happened to hire John Ferguson Jr. Perfect symmetry for Confirm or Deny.
20 years ago today.
20 years ago today, back in 2003. What were you doing?
I was
Notre Dame?
at the University of Notre Dame.
Okay, there you go.
Pretty good team.
Probably preparing for the Fighting Irish to play on a Saturday, right?
In fact, yeah, this time of year, there would have been we wouldn't be playing hockey yet, but there'd be a football game tomorrow, or Saturday rather, so I'd be preparing for that.
That'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
That'd be a good part of the tailgate.
Yeah, I'm thinking that was Brady Quinn, Jeff Samardzija. Those were fun.
That would have been right around that. I think Quinn was in the 04 draft, so he probably would have been a junior. That would have been Charlie Weiss.
BCS teams.
Probably top 10 team in the country.
They were.
Yeah. All right, there you go.
I was there.
You were there, Poulin. I love it. All right, confirm or deny. Statements are made. We go around the table. We confirm that they'll happen or we deny. It's very simple stuff. Confirm or deny. Your boy, Davis Schneider, will break camp next spring and start the season on the Blue Jay roster, the big league roster.
I will confirm that. Wow. Davis Schneider is an element. He's an ingredient. I actually, after Steve said that, I went back and looked at his minor league stats. They're much better than I thought, but I was speaking more to the pedigree of a 28th round player.
Right.
Because these guys come in so heralded, and it's Malcolm Gladwell. The top draft picks get all the attention, get all the best coaching, get all the best spots. That's why they become better. And the other guys have to just figure it out and grind.
Yeah, you're on your own, man.
Hey, you're on your own.
What are you made of?
You're on your own. It's
all
just like, had you been given a different starting point in your junior career, who knows?
That's a very good point, Poulin. I was the Davis Schneider of my junior career.
You did not have that mustache or those glasses.
No, I didn't.
It's part of the look, but there is an energy there. And
there is.
Just
and production right now. But I am
huge production.
I am a cynic by nature.
It's a role. I didn't say he was going to start.
No, I understand that. He's just got to be one of the 26 guys to break camp.
Confirm that.
I'm going to deny it just because I feel like I've seen this story so many times in pro sports where there's a guy that catches lightning in a bottle. It's incredible. I don't know what Davis Schneider is in a week, let alone in 6 months. Does he have a great spring training? Like, I can't picture a scenario, even if he has a really good September. It's difficult to picture a scenario where they game plan through the winter with him as a player on the team. In other words, I think he has to show up in the spring and make the team still. Like, I think it has to carry over.
Well, he can do that.
He very well could. There's no disputing that. But if he has a bad spring training, I don't think they look past it and say he's still our guy. I think he's got to consistently keep going.
So I came out of nowhere. I played the last 2 games of the regular season. I played the 3 games in the playoffs. Longest summer of my life. I'm reading a Roger Angell, the great baseball writer, book about a guy that came up to the majors, and it was late in the year, tore it up, absolutely tore it up. And then Roger, the way the great writer wrote, he said, and then faded away, never to be heard from again. To some, the best comes first, a miserable arrangement. I cut that quote out, Bryan, and carried that in my wallet.
Do not allow that to be you.
13 years. I literally did. I was not going to allow the best to come first. I scored on my first 2 shots in the NHL.
You had 2 goals on 2 shots?
And then I led the team in scoring in the playoffs.
Wow.
And I was not going to let that be it for me. And so Davis Schneider should cut that quote out. To some, the best comes first. A miserable arrangement.
Yeah.
And carry it around in his wallet.
All right. You're a positive guy, Poulin, and you can speak from your own experience. I
did not have that mustache.
No, you should have, though. That would have been a great look back then. I mean, that was probably in.
That would have been in.
Bet you half your teammates had that mustache, minimum. All right, confirmed tonight. Austin Matthews should be the favorite to win the Rocket Richard this season.
I will confirm that. He should be the favorite.
McDavid had 60. Robertson had a lot of goals. You have Draisaitl scores 50 every year.
And Pasternak is in the mix.
Yes, he had 60.
I think that in many ways, it's not a bounce back, obviously. I think, he's so capable. But I think at this age that he's at, in the space he's at, the contract is part of it. He's as secure as he can possibly be, and yet got it on the terms that he wanted. Everything is going in his favor right now. Everything.
Yep.
Yes,
I agree.
I will confirm.
I confirm it as well. 1 year does not take the title away from you as best goal scorer in the world. And I think he's established that for the better part of 3 or 4 years. He took the baton from Ovechkin. Ovi's still a great goal scorer. Ovi's, I don't think, in a position where he can touch up against 60 ever again. I'm not sure he scores 50 again. He's still a great player. But Ovechkin had that for about 12 years, 13 years.
Yeah.
Like basically from the second he walked in the league, he was
and
the best
won
goal
the
scorer in the world.
Rocket 8 times, 9 times in those 12 or 13
consistently.
years.
And even the down years, it was still like, that's Ovi. Like, Ovi's the guy. Matthews' down year was 41 goals. Something was off with him. There was like an injury that was kind of lingering. It never felt like he really took off. And if you look at the analytics, like the stats, goals above, all that kind of stuff, through the roof. Like, he was still getting shots on net. He's still a guy that gets into the slot, gets the puck, and gets it on net. Still think he's got the best release in the game. Yeah, I expect he wins the Rocket.
And physically,
not just favored to do so.
And mentally,
I think it's
age-wise, he's just coming in.
He's right in the wheelhouse, and I think the contract being over and behind him, and he's just going to breathe.
It's huge.
And I think he's going to have a massive year again. I think he launches back into Hart contention, and I think he scores 50-plus in his sleep if he's healthy. Like if he plays 82 games, I wouldn't be shocked if he touched 60 again. Close to it. Would not surprise me at all. Best goal scorer in the world. I think it's not a guarantee. These are odds. McDavid could score 50-plus again. Draisaitl does it every year. Robertson, Pasternak.
I think we're going to have a year with more goals. I really do.
Well, like year over year recently, Poulin, that's been the case.
Well, the goalies aren't matching the game right now. The game is the lateral pass. I talked to a goalie coach yesterday and talked about the lateral pass and what that's done to goalies physically.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's a different game.
Killing them.
It's killing them. Injury-wise.
That's the thing. Guys' groins, hips.
Bryan, the lateral pass now is harder than any shot that we ever saw in our
Right.
And the movement required of a goaltender is a whole different. Now, they are starting to train differently, I will tell you, for their knees, for their lateral
like
push.
Hips and groins.
Absolutely.
And stuff, yeah.
They're starting to train differently because of the way the game has changed.
Mm-hmm.
You think of two talented guys coming down, Marner and Matthews. And we're thinking, shoot the puck. And they're thinking, I'm going to laterally pass this 110 miles an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he's going to shoot it harder.
And the guy can't get across.
Not a chance.
Yeah. Well, that was the book got out on a lot of different goalies, but a lot of people look at the Matt Murray issues with what happened with him later in his career. That was it, man.
Now, physically, you've got
guys
to
figure that out.
And guys defend that pass well. Stick position is good.
Like, when is it on the coach to decide, hey, we got to help our goalie out here and stop this? Force a guy to shoot.
It's hard to.
Like, when do they start playing 2-on-1s completely differently? Basically, just say, take this guy, shoot him. Yeah, let him shoot, which is dangerous, though, if the guy's coming down Broadway. It's Austin Matthews. Sure you want him to shoot?
Goals are going up again. This will be an Austin Matthews benefit.
I agree with you on that. Confirmed tonight, Dak Prescott, the quarterback for the Cowboys, should have been notified of the Trey Lance trade in advance. Should have been given the heads up.
I will deny that.
Really?
I will. Players play.
Mm-hmm.
Managers manage. Now, the coach,
I can't believe Mike McCarthy was not given the heads up.
I might have whispered something to my coach if I were picking up the former 3rd overall pick in the draft.
Right.
As a quarterback, who, by the way, was in 2021. This isn't like 10 years ago. I might inform the coach, but no, I don't think you have to let a player know.
I'm denying it as well. I agree with you. I mean, and let's be honest, Dak, they paid Dak a lot of money. Dak's the man. Trey Lance is not coming in here to take his job right now. Like, it would be different if they acquired some guy with legitimate pedigree that could possibly push Dak. That's not happening. Dak's not scared of Trey Lance right now. He might be scared of Trey Lance a year from now, 2 years from now. But Dak is coming off a pretty terrible statistical season. They still played as well as they did. That's how good that team is. I got to give credit to Jerry Jones and the Cowboys. They are loaded with talent. Loaded. And I like this Trey Lance gamble. Why not? It's a 4th-round pick from an arch nemesis in San Fran.
I'm making that in a second.
Every day of the week. Bring him in, see what he's got. If you got to pull an Angels and you're going to cut him in 6 weeks, so be it. You paid a 4th to see what's under the hood. But I don't think Dak Prescott is in any position to be notified of a trade like this.
No.
There are certain guys in the league that I would say, like Patrick Mahomes. Absolutely, I'm telling Patrick Mahomes. I do think you're right, players play, but some players are different.
Oh, I think Mahomes is different than Bryan.
Mahomes is getting told this is what's coming.
I agree.
Maybe Joe Burrow's getting that. Maybe Josh Allen's getting that.
I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, I'll bet you Rodgers would in New York because of who he is and what he represents now with the Jets.
And then
but Dak's not there.
Then he'll call you and tell you.
Then he'll probably be the one that would notify.
Because he thinks you're still a supporter of his.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not rooting against him. There's a big...
You're not rooting for him.
I'm not rooting for him. I'm rooting for him to stay healthy. 65 snaps. 65%.
Point. We didn't get told ahead of time, but I was told after more than once. And Clark used to do this, He'd walk up to you and he'd say, yeah, we think we drafted your replacement this year. He's really good. He plays really hard.
Yeah.
You just look at him and go, what is that supposed to mean?
Am I motivated by this? Thanks, bro.
Great, I'll have him over to dinner.
Yeah, that's my guy. That helps that kid walking into the room. That's what that guy wants. Confirm or deny, Connor Bedard will have more points than at least one of the Maple Leafs core 4 players. Just one of the core 4. Bedard will beat them in points.
I will confirm that.
Ooh, Poulin.
Okay, here's what I've established in watching him play, and we've done, we're fortunate enough to do the U18s, and, we watch them come up.
Yep.
He's going to score goals in the National Hockey League. He can create his own shot. He doesn't need somebody else to do it for him, as some of the finishers do. Like, he can create his own shot. But he's also going to have the best passers he's ever had passing to him next year.
Best defenders he's ever had, too, trying to defend him.
He will, but he's going to have Seth Jones passing to him. He's going to have Taylor Hall passing to him, Tyler Johnson, NHL players.
Right.
And he's never had that level of support. It's not going to be a good team, but he's going to have a level of support that he isn't. He's going to score goals. He's going to score goals on the power play. He shoots the puck like no one I've seen come into the league. You just don't see.
He's a stud. He's a generational talent. Gets thrown out there probably a little bit too liberally, but like he seems like he's in the McDavid, Sid, Lindros, Lemieux, Gretzky vibe.
I'm so careful with that term. I just am.
I know, but that's the hype. The hype is if this guy's anything but a top 10 player in the league for the next decade, it's a disappointment.
They've been pretty spoiled with players in that market.
In Chicago, I would suggest so.
And I was in the building when there were 6,000 people in there in 2007 and 2008.
Right.
And, they were just marveling about these 2 kids coming, and guess what? They were right.
Exploded. I'm going to deny this, though. I have him at 25 goals, maybe 70 points, because everything you said is accurate. He's playing with the best talent he's ever played
power
against.
Play.
But I look at that Chicago team. I think they're terrible, Poulin.
They are.
And I know he's going to be PP1. He's going to play 20 minutes on that. But I think they got to be careful with him, too. He's not a big guy. I think not that there'll be load management, but you don't want to drive him into the ground. You are not expecting big things from a team standpoint this year.
I think they'll be smart, but I just think the opportunity is going to be there because he's going to be the first line winger.
He's going to play a ton. But assuming health across the board, Matthews get more points, Marner's get more points. I think Willie will, too. I think Willie's an 80-point guy. It's Tavares that possibly drops off. But last year, I was waiting for John to fall off and become more of a 25-goal, 60, 65-point guy, and he did not. He has been very consistent throughout his career.
I'm just going with the field here.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the field would suggest one of the Leafs,
right,
or Bedard ends up with 80 points, 85 points, which is absolutely a possibility. I think it's tough as an 18-year-old in the NHL on an awful team. And
I know it's tough.
The Leafs, these 4 guys are all in their primes. JT's kind of at the end of it, but still, they're going to be a really good team. They're all PP1
guys too.
They get to play with really good guys. Yeah, I think the Leafs. I think the core 4 just get past them. Beyond that, there's no way I'm answering that the same way next year.
Yeah, I think we're going to see something special in Chicago. I do. In that player, not in the team.
I think you're right. And I'm certainly hoping for that because, again, the hype is there. And what we saw at the World Juniors, we've known about this kid since he was 14, 15. Mm-hmm. Those are rare stories that you hear of a kid when he's that young, exceptional status, and he's stepping in and he lights up everything.
Well, with Patrick Kane, it was 15 for me. And they took him on one of my assistant coaches was on the U16 coaching staff that went over to play in one of the, 4 nations or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he came back and said, "You should see this 15-year-old."
Unreal.
He said he's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And he's tiny. He goes, but it doesn't matter.
Didn't matter. Yeah. Well, you look at his stats, when he went to London, I think he only played a year with the Knights.
He did.
I think he had 165 points or something. It was crazy.
Tiny then.
Yeah. And
so Denny Savard coached that first year, right? Before he got fired, 4 games in, and they put Joel Quenneville in. And Denny Savard, I remember talking to him beforehand and how excited he was to work with that young man. And Denny Savard's a little guy. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Are you worried about his size?" He just laughed. He just said, "Look at me, Poulin."
Yeah, no, that's true. Worked out pretty well for Denny.
He was just fine.
They had worked out pretty well for Patrick Kane. There you go. Confirm and deny. Brought to you by Don Valley North Lexus. Right now, lease the 2024 NX 250 signature package from just $298 bi-weekly for 24 months. Visit DonValleyNorthLexus.com for all the details. All right, Cheryl Pounder coming up. The Professional Women's Hockey League has been established. The original 6 teams have been established. A lot of the rules, a lot of the regulations have already been revealed as well. We'll catch up with Cheryl, get her take on the significance of this news, what the league could look like, which players could end up where. There's a lot to get into with Cheryl. We'll do that next.
Now, back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
All right, our best bets brought to you by FanDuel later in the hour. Jay's back in action tonight. Bo Bichette on the IL. Quad injury. Matt Chapman on the IL as well. But the big story this afternoon has been about the LA Angels putting a bunch of guys on waivers, basically just dumping money. Just saying, we're out. Take these guys. We don't want them anymore.
5 good players.
5 good players. Serviceable. Like Lucas Giolito was a stud a month ago when they acquired him, and now they just want to dump him.
Go ahead and take them.
Take them.
Take their contract.
Yeah, it's just a joke, man. I got to think Rob Manfred's going to snap out of it here. Say we can't accept this. Like it sets a horrible precedent, and it's unfair to competitive teams that aren't going to get a chance to claim these guys. Could really disturb the whole balance of the race here. So, yeah, that's what's cooking throughout baseball. Now, what's cooking throughout hockey is some big, big news that we knew was coming, and today really was a marquee moment where the Professional Women's Hockey League established the original 6 teams, and they went public with a lot of their rules in terms of free agency, in terms of drafting, in terms of money. There's still more information that will come out, team names, logos, etc., but really exciting stuff. And you have the amalgamation of the women's game, which is long overdue. Like now you've got 6 premium teams. You got a pro league that people can focus on.
You've got a chance to align with the NHL teams in that city for support, for backing, for cross-marketing, all of the above.
Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Minneapolis, Boston, New York. Pretty good starting. Pretty good. I'm sure down the road you're looking at expansion, but you got to get this off the ground first, and that's exactly what's going to happen come January. And to chat about it, we're joined now by our TSN hockey analyst, Cheryl Pounder. Cheryl, we've had you on talking about the women's game, many times in the past. Can you put today's announcement into perspective? Like, how important was this, and how significant is this news?
Well, I think the new executive director, Bryan, put it into perfect words when he said it's the most exciting day in the history of women's hockey. And guys, honestly, I'm 47 years old, and I never envisioned this day when I was young. I had a dream of going to the Olympic Winter Games, an impossible dream. But the idea of, my daughters, the idea of a best-on-best league, to be able to work in your sport, in your passion, to be able to have facilities and training and all of the resources available to support a best-on-best league. So no more going to the rink at 10 p.m. at night, slugging your bag and, finding ice time, looking for ice time somewhere, working a full-time job, trying to make ends meet to live out your passion in your prime years. So to me, today is a standalone day in the women's sport. And I can tell you, my team has a hockey game tonight, guys, and there is nothing that will keep me from it, because the pregame talk is going to be about opportunity, about passion, about living what you love. And today is just an amazing day and a great way to kick off the long weekend for me.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And again, the original 6, I said earlier, Cheryl, I hope in 100 years they're calling it that, the original 6, and this league blows up and it expands. What do you make of Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Minneapolis, Boston, New York? Do you think they got that right?
Well, I do. Certainly there's always going to be question marks around other communities that felt that they could have done a wonderful job with it. But the reality of it is you can choose only 6. You want to have an original 6. You want to make sure there's a targeted quality draft, that it is best on best, that people come and that the hockey speaks for itself. And so for me, you're looking at Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto. You know that Montreal, they've had a real good fan base there. Quebec has done a great job with teams in the past. You've got some great names there in the community to be able to really bolster it and generate a ton of momentum. Ottawa is interesting. It's along a corridor. I'm telling you, there's a hotbed right along that corridor from Ottawa to Toronto. You always see it in the rivalry series games that The buildings are sold out. Everyone wants those games. So, yeah, I mean, logistics comes into play as well. Easy to get there. A lot of athletes reside in these locations. But again, you look at Minnesota and, that's a hotbed for the United States. I mean, you look at their Olympic team and the numbers that have come out of Minnesota. Their residency program was in Blaine through the last Olympic Winter Games. I look at Boston as well, which had some success when the CWHL was in progress. And again, nostalgia there with an original six team. And then, of course, New York. You're looking at a metropolitan area, looking to play potentially in whether it's Connecticut or New Jersey or somewhere in that area. I think just these ties and these communities, it's just going to bolster the vision for the game and hopefully amp up the viewership and the fan base along these corridors.
Cheryl, you said you couldn't envision it when you were young, but there had to be some times in very recent years when it was hard for you to envision with all the different seemingly directions that different groups were going in. And why now? Is it as simple as saying that the cash infusion of Mark Walter enabled a different level of conversation?
Certainly, Dave. And I can honestly tell you there was a point in the last year and a half where my frustration was at an all-time high. And a frustration because you're coming off of whether it's an Olympics or a World Championship or I'm coaching in minor hockey, and you see it. You see how good these athletes are. You see the talent. You see the work. You see the passion. And then you're just waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting. And then you're hearing something and then it doesn't happen. And I've always said that, there can't be a splinter in the women's game. And so I really feel like the united voice and the patience that these women had was incredible. I honestly don't know I would have been able to do it in my prime years and take a back seat and say, you know what, we're not going to play. We want something bigger than ourselves. We want something that has an opportunity to be successful and sustainable. And so for me, with the Walter Group coming in and the money, but it's not just dollars, right? It's the vision. It's the CBA. It's being ratified and the recognition that it's going to, at least be 8 years to hold together what these women know that they can not only do, but what the future of the game will look like if they can grow it to other areas. So for me, that frustration's been there. So you've been hearing it all along. It's coming, and I'm kind of been waiting and wasn't sure if it was actually going to happen. So today was one of those aha moments where you look up at the sky, you want to pinch yourself and scream because it's been a long time coming. And I really do believe that there's a lot of generated interest around it. There's a lot of buzz. My girls, the rinks they're in, they know the names of these women. They're familiar to them, and they want to support them. So I think it's about everyone else now coming out, drinking the Kool-Aid, getting a snapshot of it, and buying a ticket.
With Cheryl Pounder again on the news today, the Professional Women's Hockey League has been established, 6 teams. It'll be a 24-game schedule. It will begin in January of 24. Free agency happening September 1st through the 10th, and the draft will happen on September 18th here in Toronto. We were talking about this earlier, Cheryl, where you mentioned yourself, obviously a former player. Obviously, you're still heavily involved in the game. Your daughters, coaching them. I have daughters that play. My oldest was saying recently how much she wants to go, see a women's game. It's an easy sell for me. But in terms of the women's world and the women's game, how much emphasis has to be placed on marketing towards men and boys now? Like in order for this to really explode and be something that can work long term?
Well, I think you've got to bring your boys, your sons, the siblings out to these games because they're the ones that recognize that, this can happen. And it's like registration numbers after the Olympics. They go up. Why? Not just mothers watch the game, but daughters or fathers. And they say, you know what, we can put our daughter in this. So, for me, yeah, there has to be marketing around that. I think when you see the game, you do fall in love with the game, and it's your choice, right? If you go to it and you're not sold, well, you're not sold. But to me, yeah, that there has to be a target for that. I know, my husband, he's a girl dad. He loves it. He's in the rinks all the time. So, I think it's the cousins, it's my nephews. They come out, right? And so we've got to recognize that hockey is hockey. And, I know my good friend Becky Keller said it best when she said, her sons watched her play in Vancouver Olympics when they were young. And, they went back and who's your favorite player? And, number 22 and, Wickenheiser or so-and-so. And they were using their numbers and they were male. And so because that's what they had been exposed to. And I've always said, we're often a product of our environment. So let's outstretch. Let's widen that lens so that, we can get a feel for it or a snapshot. Because certainly, you need everyone to get a sniff of this game, and you need it. And we've really seen a change over the years. I can honestly tell you when I'm in the rinks calling these games or rivalry series games, when you do look out, you are seeing young boys waving their flags. You are seeing the dads, originally you have daughters that played, but then all of a sudden grandpa comes out and, your uncle comes out and they don't have a daughter that plays, but they have a niece that plays. And, and then they get having a conversation with their friend who's, kind of putting it down. They say, hey, you can come out and watch it. And all of a sudden you can see the snowball effect of the game and how good it really is and the fast pace that it is and the skaters that they are, the way that they think the game.
We won't get into all the technicalities of the draft and the players and this, the salary specifics of it, but am I correct in that each individual market will get the opportunity to sign 3 free agents to ensure that the first 3 key pieces go to the best suited markets? Am I correct about that?
Yes, you are, Dave. So essentially free agency will open on September 1st. And at that point, the 6 teams can sign between the 1st and the 10th, 3 athletes per team. So obviously everyone has to declare by September 3rd whether there's an intention to enter the draft. So there was a player evaluation committee that was put together with minds from across the landscape of the women's game. So we're talking NCAA, U Sport, IIHF, Canada Hockey, USA Hockey, the PHF, a big committee that recognized, who could be part of this group. And they came with, 300 members that could be part of this draft. And so there needs to be a declaration by September 3rd who would like to enter the draft. So in free agency between the 1st and the 10th, 3 players per team, and assuming, top players in the game, will be allocated across those 6 teams. So 18 players will be gone by the 10th of September. So then on the 18th of September, when the draft actually takes place, there will be 15 rounds of a draft whereby each team will get their additional players to get their roster to 18.
This is going to be a wild ride in the next month and a half, Cheryl. Everything you're detailing here, it's go time real quick.
Yeah, it's go time, and it's awesome, to be truthful, because I know how many wonderful players are sitting in the Toronto area, and I'm going, well, Toronto can only keep 3.
Right.
So, who's going to Ottawa, who's going to Montreal, who's crossing the border. And, because they're being paid, and these players will be paid likely the highest, this is the draw. And, they all wanted a sustainable league, so they wanted a wage that would be sustainable as well. So you're not necessarily going to see those couple $100,000 salaries, because there's always also a recognition that it has to be sustainable and there has to be growth within it. So that's one of the important pieces around it. But those players will expect to make, 80,000 plus. Which is a nice number, 35,000 looking at the minimum. But again, the resources that are going to be made available to them are going to allow them to reach their potential as athletes in their prime. And to me, any athlete wants that opportunity, and these women are going to have it.
With Cheryl Pounder, again, the Professional Women's Hockey League has been established. 6 teams. It'll begin in January. The draft coming up, free agency coming up. And, there's, I believe, an understanding that they're still going to figure out exactly which venues they're going to use. Yeah. They're still working those details out, but there might be a chance to connect, if not with the NHL immediately, possibly the American Hockey League, maybe the CHL, maybe college. Do you see that as a part of the plan here, Cheryl, to try to link up with their schedules and maybe have double headers or whatever?
Absolutely. I think that's part of it. If you want to grow the game, visibility is key, and marketing your game in the right spots, the right areas, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're at one venue. And so I'm also a firm believer that you want the right building, right? You want a building that can house fans, but you don't want it empty. You want to make sure it's got a good feeling. It's not hollow. So it's attractive in nature. It's got a good vibe. But, so you could be looking at AHL venues, OHL venues, but I do believe that there are going to be these neutral sites. So doubleheader games, whether it be the All-Star game as well as the Winter Classic. But you're also looking at, maybe some other high profile or some events that are going to be targeted where there's going to be more eyes on them to do these games so that there's right away, there's a platform. And that's what I think women's hockey in many ways has been fighting for many years. And I don't think we've known how to do it is the platform to be able to garner that visibility. And so I think there's been a lot of thought process around this. I think there's been a lot of learnings that have happened over the last decade about, where the growth can happen and who you need to play in front of and where. So I think that, that's going to be a big thing, is that there are those links to those NHL opportunities. And again, it's another platform. It's more eyes, a lot of male eyes as well. Mm-hmm. That, again, you talked about it, Bryan. You want to get the eyes on it, give it an opportunity. So I think there will be those neutral sites, which is why I think, they haven't come right out right now and said that this is exactly where they're playing, because there will be those off-site locations, obviously with 12 home games and 12 away.
Right. And an understanding of how important international hockey still remains. They were talking about that today, that the IHF is, on board with this, the IOC, because that still feels like a big platform, Cheryl. Like the IOC can be tough in terms of the way they operate and what they allow in terms of accessibility and all that. But the idea of bringing, this league to an international level, whether it's at the World Championships, whether it's at the Olympics every 4 years, I mean, that's the ultimate promotion, isn't it? You get to the Olympics and you get the best players in the world that are also playing in the same league. What an opportunity for the players to promote that.
Well, and that's what you want. So, I mean, if you look at, say, the rivalry series, which will likely have 7 games that we'll be doing with TSN, they're sold out, mm-hmm. right? So, I mean, whether it be Seattle or whether you're in anywhere in Canada, and that's a rivalry that is going to be in this league. And so where you're waiting to see it, at a tournament or at a world championship, you can catch it every week. And so, we're always saying, and it used to piss me off, to be truthful, because, you get back from the Olympic Winter Games and people would be like, wow, what a product, those Canada-U.S. games and such talent. And, where are they? And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Well, they're in your backyard playing at 10 o'clock at night in a small rink that, their parents can't even watch in. So, now it's there. You can follow your players. Your daughters, your sons, they have a choice. They can fall in love with the NHL and they can cheer for Mitch Marner if that's who they want, but they can also cheer for Sarah Nurse. So it'll be their choice because they're both going to be visible. But there's an opportunity in between these years in the quad and in the cycle to garner momentum. And that's what we've always said. We always have momentum coming out of it, mm-hmm. but where's the momentum going into it? And so this provides another landscape, an avenue to grow the game. And let's face it, guys, it's not just Canada-U.S. players. I mean, there are so many great players out there that don't make their respective national teams, or they don't fit into the puzzle piece. International players like Alina Mueller, Stalder, perhaps Hirakoski coming over. These are unbelievable talents that we see on the international stage at a world championship or an Olympics, but we don't get an opportunity to watch them day in, day out. My D on my team need to watch these athletes, the way they move effortlessly along the blue line, their edge work. So I think that's really pivotal. And these women are willing to do the work in their communities to garner that momentum because they know they've always had to do it. So they're willing to put in the work to generate the buzz around the community, around the logo, around the marketing, because they do believe it's part of their responsibility.
This is really terrific news. I know sitting beside you and working beside you, your passion for the game, lady, and don't change a thing. I'm really happy for you.
Thanks, Poulin. I just got to get you out for a face-off. Remember, you told me you teach my centers how to cheat.
That's right. It's just a matter of time, Poulin. You got to follow up on that. All right, Cheryl, we'll leave it there. Enjoy practice tonight. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks, guys.
There's Cheryl Pounder, our TSN hockey analyst. The Professional Women's Hockey League.
Awesome.
It's great. Yep, it's great. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it launches, how creative it's going to get, what they do with this, where it goes. And
you talk about the brothers and the sons and the fathers coming out, and my knowledge of the women's game has changed just working beside Cheryl.
Yeah.
Renata Fast and, some of the people that we've had a chance to work with here.
Amazing.
It's been great for me and an eye-opener for me. And I've been in the game a long time.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember during July 1st, I think it was, Renata came in, Tessa was there, Cheryl was kicking around. Like, we were all just sitting there in the back room talking about the women's game. And
by the way, I'm not going to the front of the net when Cheryl's there.
No,
I'm not.
You're losing that battle. Don't do it, Poulin. Don't do it. All right, we'll come back with our best bets brought to you by FanDuel. Tee up the Jays game one more time. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.
Now, back to OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
All right, today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Coming off a winner yesterday, Poulin, we're feeling it tonight. Barrios under the number 5.5 strikeouts. I think Barrios pitches well. I think the Jays get another win tonight. But I'm going under 5.5 Ks for Barrios. Mariners run line tonight against your Oakland Athletics.
Thank you.
I know you're a big fan. So they win by 2+ tonight. And I got Orioles money line as well against the White Sox. This is where the best teams separate, right? Mariners been the hottest team in baseball. Baltimore's been outstanding all year. Oakland's terrible. The White Sox are terrible.
There's a split now.
There's a split.
That's why the Jays have to and will win again tonight.
Okay, you're on it. I love it. Barrios under 5.5. Mariners run line. Orioles money line. Paying plus 316. Getting plus money on that. Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. The first inning means as much as the ninth when you bet baseball on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly. 18+ and physically located in Ontario. If you can believe it, I got to take a little bit more time off. I'm going to another event. Got a big event coming up. My friends from Molson Coors. We're going to take care of business up in Muskoka.
Terrific.
But the boys are coming back. I'll be back. It'll be go time. Poulin, it was great seeing you for a couple of days.
Yeah, it was fun to slip in for a couple of days.
Awesome seeing you.
Some good news carried through a couple of days. It's been fun. We're going to get back to work here pretty soon.
Go time. It is go time. Poulin, great seeing you, buddy.
Thank you.
There's Dave Poulin. Thanking everyone behind the scenes. As always, everyone for tuning in today. Radio, TV, podcast, web. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at 4 p.m.
We'll chat then.